Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Let me tell you what it sounds like when a room full of people laughs at your existence, and your own wife is holding the microphone. It sounds like glasses clinking, muffled chuckles, and someone at the back yelling, "Oh my God! Hazel, you're savage." That moment still replays in my head like a car crash I can't look away from. 1 second, I was holding a glass of flat champagne, smiling like an idiot, thinking maybe this night would be different. The next second, my wife was up there joking about how being married to Lowell is like having an emotional support cactus. Quiet, stiff, and only there because you feel guilty throwing it away. Laughter. Not polite laughter. Loud, mean, ugly laughter. I didn't even know she could talk like that. Not in public. Not about me. But she did. And she wasn't finished. She kept going. Something about how I still fold my laundry like I'm auditioning for a grandmother role in a retirement commercial. People were howling. I looked down at my plate. Chicken skewer. Some kind of dip. My name tag, slightly peeling off my jacket. And then I realized I was the only person in the room not smiling. That's when I stood up. Walked right out. Past the hostess. Past the valet. Past everything I thought was still real. She didn't even notice. Hazel, my wife of 10 years, the woman who used to laugh at my dad jokes in our tiny apartment kitchen. She didn't even turn around. I took the train back home in silence. It was snowing lightly, the kind of snow that doesn't stick, just floats down like it's too polite to cause trouble. The city lights blurred through the windows as I sat with one question in my head. When did I become her material instead of her partner? That was the last night I lived with her. She just didn't know it yet. I didn't leave a note. No suitcase by the door. No dramatic exit music playing in the background. Just an apartment left exactly as it always was, except for the keys I slid under her favorite coffee mug on the counter. I didn't even bother flipping the lights off. She always liked walking into a warmly lit home. I figured I'd give her that one last time. She came home around midnight. I know because I was watching from across the street. Dumb, I know. But something in me needed to see her face when she realized I wasn't there. That the person she joked about in front of 50 people had vanished without warning. I saw her through the window, laughing on the phone as she unlocked the door, still dressed in that sleek red dress, still glowing from the attention. She stepped inside, tossed her purse on the couch, and paused. I imagined her noticing the quiet, the absence, maybe even calling out my name. But she didn't. She walked into the kitchen, saw the mug, and stared at it. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She just stood there. And then, she laughed. I swear to you. She let out the tiniest smirk and whispered something I couldn't hear. I don't know what I expected. Shock? Regret? Anguish? Instead, she looked amused, like I had just added one final punchline to her performance. I turned away. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in a cheap motel room off I-94, listening to the sounds of people arguing through thin walls. I couldn't stop replaying it all. The roast, her voice, the crowd laughing. That one guy in the back who slapped his leg and said, "Poor guy doesn't stand a chance." He was right. You'd think I'd feel free, relieved. But no, I felt like I'd just walked away from a life I wasn't important in. And it still hurt. Not because I loved her. Not anymore. But because I honestly believed I mattered. The next morning, she sent me a single text. "Are you being dramatic again?" That's when I blocked her number. And that's when I realized she never thought she'd lose me. Because in her eyes, I wasn't a person. I was just material, safe, predictable. And no one mourns the loss of something they assumed would always be there, even when they kicked it. But I was gone. And I wasn't coming back. 3 days passed before I returned to the apartment. Not to stay. Not even to talk. I needed to grab a few essentials, my laptop, my documents, some clothes, things I thought she wouldn't bother touching. But when I stepped through the door, something felt off. It wasn't the furniture. It wasn't the air. It was the silence. Too clean. Too still. Like a stage that had just been reset after the actors left. Her shoes were lined up perfectly by the wall. She'd lit one of those scented candles she always saved for special evenings. the ones with pretentious names like Tuscan Memory or Velvet Sea. And on the table where I'd left my keys under the mug was gone, replaced with a handwritten note. Short, casual, like nothing had happened. "You're being ridiculous. It was just a joke. You can't seriously be this sensitive." That note hit harder than any slap could have. It was confirmation, not regret, not misunderstanding, just cold dismissal. I didn't reply, but I looked around, and that's when I noticed my laptop wasn't where I left it. It was on the floor, half open behind the couch. Strange. I picked it up and flipped the screen open. Took a second to boot, and there it was. A chat window still open. I wasn't snooping. I didn't need to hack passwords or dig through folders. It was just there, like she never expected I'd be back. The last message read, "Hazel, he left, lol. I think I actually scared him off this time. Unknown contact. Told you. He's too fragile. You could do way better. Hazel, oh, I am doing better. You just don't come with a tax refund." I felt my stomach sink. No names, no details, but the tone said everything. This wasn't just a misstep at a party. This wasn't just a joke. This was a pattern, a setup. I'd been slowly erased from her real life and left as a prop in her public one. I didn't take anything, not even my clothes. I walked out with the laptop still open in my hands and left the door wide open behind me. Let her wonder. Let her feel that absence for once. It wasn't about revenge. It was about finally realizing that I was never in her story. Just a character she thought she could write out at will. I didn't mean to see her again. That wasn't part of the plan. I'd already blocked her number, deleted her from my contacts, removed her face from my screens. But a week after I walked out, I was at the coffee shop 2 blocks from our old apartment, the one I used to visit when I needed to work in silence. I hadn't thought twice about going there. I needed strong espresso and weak Wi-Fi. That's all. But then I saw her. Hazel. She was sitting by the window, dressed like she always did on presentation days. Tailored, polished, precise. And she wasn't alone. A man I didn't recognize sat across from her, leaned in too closely, laughing like he'd known her for years. Maybe he had. I wouldn't know. I watched them for a few seconds too long. Then I stood frozen when she looked up and spotted me. She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She just waved, like we were ex-classmates bumping into each other at Whole Foods. I turned and left. Later that night, I checked my email for the first time since leaving. I wish I hadn't. There were 2 messages from her. The subject lines said everything. "Can we talk like adults? You're being overly emotional." I didn't open them, but I couldn't stop thinking about that man's hand on her knee, the way she leaned into his shoulder like I never existed. I wondered how long it had been going on. I wondered if the roast at the office party was a goodbye dressed up as a joke. That night, I started writing everything down, not because I planned to share it, but because it felt like the only way to stay sane. I wrote about the way her laughter changed tone when we were around her coworkers, how she stopped reaching for my hand in public, how every joke she made always came with a pinch too sharp to ignore. When I finished, I stared at the screen for an hour before realizing I didn't feel better. I felt hollow, like I had lived inside someone else's script, and the final scene had already been written before I ever stepped on set. I closed my laptop, sat on the edge of the motel bed, and whispered to no one. Was I ever actually loved, or just conveniently tolerated? There was no answer, but I was starting to understand something far worse than betrayal. I was never the main character in my own life. 3 nights later, I received an email. Not from Hazel, but from one of her coworkers. Someone named Darcy, who I'd met maybe twice in passing. The subject line read, "I probably shouldn't be doing this." I hesitated. My gut told me to delete it, but curiosity is cruel. I opened it. The message was short. 2 sentences. "You didn't deserve that. I thought you should know she planned the roast weeks in advance. She practiced it here in the office with Julian coaching her." My chest tightened. I read it again and again. I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that Hazel rehearsed mocking me like it was a routine, or the fact that she did it with help, with her boss. like it was a team-building exercise. I didn't reply to Darcy. Couldn't. What would I say? Thanks for confirming I was entertainment? No. There was no dignity left in chasing crumbs. But that night, something else happened. Hazel called. I didn't answer, of course. But her voicemail came through, and against my better judgment, I played it. Her voice was slower than usual, softer. Maybe she'd been drinking, or maybe she knew she was losing control. She said, I know you're probably still angry, but I think you misunderstood what I was trying to do that night. It was just humor. I was trying to show people that we were real, that we could laugh at ourselves. You always told me you hated being the boring couple. I was just trying to, I don't know, make us feel a little bigger. I listened in silence. She paused, then added, also, if you're upset about what you saw on the laptop, that message wasn't for you. I didn't mean it like that, and you know it. That last line hit me harder than the rest. That message wasn't for you. Exactly. So much of our marriage wasn't for me. Not her time. Not her affection. Not her honesty. It was for her coworkers. Her image. Her social circle. I was just the placeholder. The +1 with the invisible name tag. I deleted the voicemail and went to bed with a strange calm in my chest. Not peace, but the start of something close. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. It had been nearly 2 weeks since I left, and the silence between us had turned into a kind of unspoken war. No more voicemails. No more emails. No knock at my motel door. And for a while, I thought maybe she'd finally accepted it, that her husband had simply slipped out of the picture without a final scene. But Hazel was never the type to let someone else write the ending. That's why I wasn't surprised when she showed up at my sister's house unannounced. I'd only been staying there 2 nights. Jules, my sister, had offered after finding out I was living out of a motel. I don't care what happened, Lo, she told me. You're not going to rot alone in some roadside ghost box. I didn't argue. For once, I was too tired to pretend I was okay. Hazel rang the bell mid-morning, holding a box in her hands and a smile like she was visiting an old friend. Jules answered, and the moment Hazel saw me standing in the hallway behind her, she said, I'm here to return his things, and talk if that's still allowed. Her voice was calm, polished, practiced, like always. The box wasn't even full. A few shirts, a book I'd been halfway through, my shaving kit still zipped. She held it out like it was proof she cared, as if returning my forgotten things somehow wiped away what she'd done. I didn't take it. I just looked at her and said, Is this part of the joke, too? She blinked, caught off guard. That was rare. Hazel always had a comeback, always had the last word. But this time, her mouth opened and closed with nothing in between. I stepped around Jules, walked to the porch and sat down. I didn't invite her to follow, but of course she did. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said it. I don't know why you're punishing me like this. I didn't cheat. I didn't leave. I just made one mistake. And you're acting like I set the house on fire. I looked at her, and I said the thing I'd been rehearsing in my head for days. No, Hazel, you didn't set the house on fire. You laughed while it burned, and handed out marshmallows to the crowd. She didn't reply, just stood there, blinking too fast, pretending she wasn't blinking back tears. But I didn't feel satisfaction, or revenge, only clarity. She didn't understand what she destroyed because to her, it was never real in the first place. Just an image, and I finally stopped trying to live inside one. After Hazel left my sister's porch that day, I thought it was over for good. She hadn't cried, hadn't screamed, hadn't even raised her voice. She walked away like someone leaving a disappointing movie halfway through. Bored, not broken. But that night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote her a letter, not because I wanted her back, not even because I needed her to understand, but because I had so many words stuck in my throat, and if I didn't let them out somewhere, I'd keep suffocating in the silence she left behind. It wasn't poetic or clever, just raw, quiet, and painfully honest. I never intended to send it. I folded it, sealed it in an envelope, and left it on the kitchen counter at Jules' place. But the next morning it was gone. I didn't ask, but I knew. My sister had seen it, read it, and sent it anyway. She's protective like that, and impatient with my cowardice. 3 days later, Hazel showed up again. No box, no rehearsed lines, no heels, just sneakers and a wrinkled hoodie I hadn't seen her wear since college. Her hair was tied back like she couldn't be bothered to impress anyone. "I read it," she said quietly, standing at the edge of the porch. I said nothing. She stepped closer. "You said in the letter that I used to look at you like I saw everything. And now I only look through you like I'm searching for someone else." More silence. She nodded to herself. "You were right." For the first time in weeks, I saw something unfamiliar on her face. Not guilt. Not shame. Something worse. Recognition. "I didn't think I'd ever lose you," she said. "Not really. I thought you'd get angry, disappear for a bit, and come back like always. I thought I could humiliate you in public and still keep your love in private." I looked at her, and for a moment, I almost believed she finally saw the wreckage she'd caused. But then she added, "Maybe we were never a good match. Maybe you were just too sensitive for the kind of life I need." There it was. The old Hazel, still blaming the fire on the flammability of the furniture. I stood up, walked past her, and opened the front door. "You're right," I said. "We weren't a good match. But not because I was too sensitive." She didn't ask why. It's been 3 months since that day on the porch. Hazel never came back a third time. No more voicemails. No more boxes of memories. No dramatic airport scenes or last-minute realizations. Just silence. And surprisingly, I welcomed it. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment near the lake. It's not glamorous. Nothing like the downtown condo Hazel insisted we needed to stay relevant. But it's quiet, peaceful. I've started cooking again. Something I hadn't done since the first few years of our marriage. I forgot how grounding it feels to cook for yourself, not out of obligation, but because you want to nourish something, even if it's just you. I picked up journaling again, not to bleed my heart onto paper like I did in that letter, but to start charting who I was before all of this. Before the office party. Before the roast. Before I became a character in someone else's joke. It turns out, I'm not just the boring, outdated husband. I'm someone who listens deeply, who notices things most people skip over, who still cries during old jazz records when the saxophone hits just right, and I'm okay with that. Jules encouraged me to submit one of my old history essays to a local magazine. It got picked up last week. It's a small column. Nobody's name-dropping me. But for the first time in years, my words exist in the world. Not as the punchline of someone else's narrative, but as my own. As for Hazel, I don't hate her. I honestly don't. I think she's still out there chasing applause, curating an image, turning partners into props. But I've stopped wondering who her new audience is. That stage doesn't belong to me anymore. Because somewhere along the way, while walking away from the life I thought I needed, I found a better one. One that doesn't require me to be anyone else but me. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever been the quiet one, the underestimated one, or the one who finally walked away, we'd love to hear your story. Comment below with a historical moment or personal experience where someone found themselves after losing something. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. You're not alone. Not anymore.